The paper felt cold in my hand, too thin for the weight of what it carried. It was the monthly statement, tucked between junk mail and a flyer for a local pizza place. I almost tossed it, another reminder of bills, of the mundane machinery of a shared life. But something snagged my eye, a line item buried deep within the list of groceries and gas, and the occasional online purchase. A name, too familiar yet utterly alien in this context. Paris. Hotel Le Petit Louvre. 5 nights. Charged to my card. My card. The one with my name on it. The one I used for the household, for my business expenses, for our life. The room tilts. The air leaves my lungs in a ragged gasp. My hands are shaking so hard the paper rustles like dry leaves. Paris. Not a business trip he'd mentioned. Not a surprise for our anniversary, which was months away anyway. Paris. And another line item, just above it. 2 first-class plane tickets. To Paris. 4 dates in 2 weeks. The names on the tickets, one was his. The other, a name I knew. A name I had heard him mention in passing, a colleague, a friend from his past he'd recently reconnected with on social media. A woman. The world shrinks to the size of this single sheet of paper. The colors of the room blur. The faint scent of lemon polish I'd used this morning suddenly feels sickeningly sweet, like something rotten trying to hide. My ears are ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowns out the clock ticking on the mantelpiece, the distant sound of traffic outside, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. He's taking her to Paris. On my dime. Using my credit card. The one that represented years of my work, my savings, my financial stability. He didn't just betray me. He used me. He used the very foundation I had built alongside him, believing it was for us. The outrage is a physical force, hot and searing, starting in my gut and rushing upwards, filling my chest, tightening my throat. But beneath it, cold and sharp, is the understanding. This isn't a mistake. This isn't an accident. This is deliberate. Planned. Concealed. He didn't ask. He didn't tell. He just took. And he used the shared trust, the shared access, the shared resources to fund a betrayal so blatant, so audacious, it feels like a slap across the face. My husband. The man I built a life with. The man I swore vows to. He's taking his mistress to Paris. Right now, in this moment, the air is thick with the stench of deceit. The beautiful, familiar lines of my living room are suddenly ugly, tainted. Everything is a lie. Every kiss, every shared meal, every casual touch. A performance. All leading up to this hidden escape, this secret rendezvous funded by my hard work. It feels like a violation, not just of my heart, but of something fundamental, something sacred. The implicit contract of a life built together. He stole from me. Not just money. He stole my sense of security, my belief in the man I married, my future as I envisioned it. The paper flutters from my nerveless fingers, drifting to the polished floorboards. It lands face up, the damning words staring at the ceiling. Hôtel Le Petit Louvre. Paris. 2 first-class tickets. Her name. His name. My card. The silence in the house is deafening now. A vast, empty space where my reality used to be. I am standing in the ruins of my marriage, holding nothing but the ghosts of trust and the very tangible evidence of a monstrous lie. He is going to Paris. And he thinks he's gotten away with it. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Life before Paris was quiet, comfortable, routine. We had settled into the rhythm of years together. His job, my work from home, dinner at 6:30, the same side of the bed. There were no grand gestures, no soaring passions anymore, but there was a steady hum of companionship. Or what I believed was companionship. We talked about our days, shared mundane details, planned weekends that were often canceled. It wasn't thrilling, but it felt safe. Grounded. Real. I remember thinking sometimes that maybe this was what marriage became. A quiet merging of 2 separate lives, running parallel, occasionally intersecting for logistics and shared meals. There was a comfortable predictability to it. Maybe a little boring, yes, but boredom felt like a small price to pay for stability, for the absence of drama, for the quiet certainty of knowing where you stood. My work was my escape in a way, writing, creating worlds on a screen. It gave me a sense of purpose independent of him, a corner of my life that was entirely mine. I pour myself into it, sometimes working late into the night, fueled by coffee and the quiet satisfaction of building something word by word. He supported it in a detached sort of way. He'd ask how it was going, nod along, but there wasn't much curiosity beyond that. He had his world, I had mine, and they intersected at the dinner table and in the bedroom, less frequently in recent months. Looking back, the signs were probably there. Subtle shifts. A phone he kept closer than usual. Late nights at the office that stretched later and later. A new kind of guardedness in his eyes when I asked about his day. But I dismissed them. I told myself it was stress from work. A new project. A phase. We all have phases, right? Moments when we retreat a little, when the weight of the world presses down. You give space. You offer comfort. You trust. Trust. It feels like a foreign word now. Like a language I once spoke fluently but have now forgotten. Or perhaps a language he never truly learned. The inciting incident wasn't just finding the statement. It was the cold, hard realization that flickered in my mind the second I saw the words, Hotel Le Petit Louvre. Before the shock, before the hurt, there was a flash of pure, unadulterated clarity. He didn't just make a mistake. He planned this. He chose this. He actively, deliberately used my resources, my money, to build his secret life. That level of calculation, that level of disrespect, it was a betrayal far deeper than just infidelity. It was a violation of everything we supposedly were. My first instinct, in the seconds after the paper fluttered to the floor, was raw, visceral panic. To scream. To call him. To confront him right then. To demand an explanation. To watch him squirm. My hands balled into fists, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to smash something, anything, to shatter the suffocating silence that had descended on the house. But something stopped me. A small, cold voice in the back of my mind. The part of me that writes stories, that understands motivation and consequence, that looks for patterns and weaknesses. What would screaming achieve? He would lie. He would deny. He would twist it, somehow making it my fault. He would smooth talk, minimize, promise it would never happen again. Anything to keep his carefully constructed deception intact. He would protect himself. And I would be left with his lies, his manipulations, and the burning, untreated wound of his betrayal. No, not this time. The initial attempts to adapt felt less like adapting and more like performing. I had to act normal. I had to keep the mask on. Every interaction with him became a carefully calibrated performance. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. Casual questions that were fishing for information. Listening to his mundane stories about work, knowing he was simultaneously planning a secret life behind my back. It was exhausting. Living a lie, even one thrust upon you, drains the soul. Every day felt like wading through thick mud, the air heavy and difficult to breathe. The house, once my sanctuary, felt like a cage. His presence in it, a constant, grating reminder of the deception. I started small. I logged into the credit card account online, feigning casual interest when he was near. The details were all there, undeniable. The dates, the amounts, the confirmation numbers. My stomach churned every time I saw them, a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. I memorized them. I wrote them down in a small, hidden notebook, feeling like a spy in my own home. Each number, each date, was another piece of the puzzle of his treachery. I checked our joint calendar. He had blocked out the week of the trip as business travel, vague. Convenient. A lie in plain sight. He didn't even have the decency to come up with a fake conference name or a client meeting. Just business travel. It was almost insulting in its simplicity. He clearly thought I was too oblivious to notice, or too timid to question. He was wrong. The days stretched on, each one a battle against my own emotions. The urge to shatter the facade, to scream, was a constant pressure behind my eyes. But the cold voice, the strategic part of me, held firm. Not yet. Not here. Not like this. I started noticing things I had previously ignored. The way he lingered over his phone, quickly minimizing the screen when I walked in. The hushed tone of some calls. The new cologne, something lighter, fresher than his usual scent. Small things, insignificant on their own, but now, illuminated by the harsh light of betrayal, they painted a clear picture. He wasn't just having an affair. He was actively, excitedly building this new reality, this secret adventure, right under my nose. The financial details were particularly galling. First-class tickets. A luxury hotel. He wasn't just sneaking away, he was indulging. He was pouring money, my money, into creating a lavish experience with another woman. The sheer arrogance of it was breathtaking. It fueled a new kind of anger, colder, sharper than the initial shock. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was a profound sense of being taken advantage of being used and discarded. I started staying up later after he went to bed, searching online for the hotel, looking up pictures, reading reviews, imagining them there. The thought was a torment, a deliberate self-inflicted wound. I needed to understand the scope of it, the reality he was escaping into. Le Petit Louvre. Charming, elegant, expensive. A place for lovers. I felt a strange detachment setting in. The woman who had stared at that credit card statement, crumpled on the floor, felt like a different person. That woman was consumed by hurt and confusion. This new woman, she was watching. She was learning. She was planning. The rising challenges weren't just external. They were internal. Maintaining the lie was the hardest part. Smiling when I felt like crying. Asking about his day when I knew exactly how he was planning to spend a week of it. The effort of suppressing the rage, the sadness, the disgust, left me physically aching at the end of each day. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. My mind raced through scenarios. Confrontation. Divorce. Selling the house. The logistics were overwhelming. But beneath the practical worries was the constant thrum of the emotional pain. It was a physical weight in my chest, making it hard to breathe deeply. He seemed oblivious. Happier, even. Whistling sometimes as he got ready for work. Less stressed, more relaxed. The hypocrisy was staggering. He was energized by his coming deception, while I was being slowly crushed by the weight of it. There was a moment, standing in the kitchen one morning, watching him butter his toast, when I felt an overwhelming wave of pity. Not for myself, but for him. Pity for the kind of man who could do this. Who could look his wife in the eye, share a quiet breakfast, and hold this monumental deception in his heart. It was a hollow, empty kind of existence. But the pity was fleeting, quickly replaced by the hard, cold resolve that had begun to take root. He was underestimating me. He saw the quiet wife, the one who focused on her work, the one who didn't ask too many questions. He saw someone he could walk over, someone whose resources he could appropriate without consequence. He saw a victim. That was his first mistake. The second mistake was not knowing that I was a writer, that I understood narrative, that I knew how to build a story, layer by layer, and how to deliver a devastating plot twist. The third mistake was using my credit card. The midpoint shift wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, deliberate freeze. It happened gradually over those agonizing days of waiting, of acting, of watching him. The initial shock and hurt began to crystallize into something harder, colder. It wasn't enough to just leave. It wasn't enough to just end the marriage. He needed to understand the consequences of his actions, not just emotionally but practically. He needed to feel the tangible loss, the disruption, that he had so carelessly inflicted upon me. I remembered reading once in a thriller novel about how the most powerful weapons are often the ones the enemy provides. He had given me the weapon. My credit card. My authorization. My financial identity. He had used it to plan his escape, his betrayal. I would use it to ensure that escape never happened. The idea solidified over several sleepless nights. It started as a vengeful fantasy, a fleeting thought, but the more I turned it over, the more logical, the more satisfying it became. He thought he was being so clever, so discreet. Using my card, assuming I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't care, or wouldn't know what to do if I did. He was wrong on all counts. The key was authorization. As the primary cardholder, I had the authority. The bank, the airline, the hotel, they were ultimately accountable to me. Not to him, even though he was an authorized user. The power lay with the one whose name was on the account, the one whose credit history was tied to its usage. That was me. The strategy formed, piece by painstaking piece. I wouldn't confront him before the planned trip. That would give him time to scramble, to potentially rearrange things, to lie his way out of it. No. The timing had to be perfect. It had to hit him when he was most vulnerable, most invested, most confident in his success. The deepening crisis wasn't just the crumbling of my marriage, it was the intense pressure of executing the plan while maintaining the facade of normalcy. Every day was a performance, a high-stakes act where one wrong word, one misplaced glance, could expose everything. I started making quiet preparations, gathering documents, contacting a lawyer, discreetly, through an encrypted email, getting my own financial affairs in order, transferring funds, opening a separate bank account he didn't know about, building my own escape route, parallel to his but in the opposite direction. The details of the cancellation plan were meticulous. I couldn't just call and say, "My husband is cheating," cancel his trip. That would be messy, potentially complicated. It needed to be simple, direct, and leverage the power I held. The cancellation had to happen at the absolute last possible moment, but with enough time for the consequences to fully land. Not the day they were supposed to leave. That would be too close, too easy for him to somehow fix last minute. No. It had to happen just before. Enough time for the airline and hotel to process the cancellation, for the notification to hit him, but not enough time for him to recover, to book something else, to salvage the trip. I decided on the day before his business trip to Paris. The tension in the house became a palpable thing, thick enough to cut with a knife, though only I seemed to feel it. He was humming, packing his suitcase, talking about the important meetings he had scheduled. My stomach twisted, listening to his lies, knowing the glamorous, romantic reality he was anticipating, while I was quietly, methodically dismantling it. Every casual question he asked felt loaded. "Did you pay the credit card bill this month?" My heart leaped into my throat, but my voice was steady. "Yes, dear." Took care of it. A small, almost imperceptible smile played on my lips. I had paid it, of course. Paying it ensured the account was in good standing, ensuring my authority wasn't compromised by a late payment. The plan felt cold, ruthless. It wasn't about winning him back. It wasn't about reconciliation. It wasn't even entirely about revenge, though that was certainly a powerful motivator. It was about justice. A skewed, personal, deeply satisfying kind of justice. He used my resources to build his lie. I would use my authority over those resources to tear it down. The nights were the hardest. Lying awake beside him, listening to his even breathing, knowing the chasm that lay between us. Knowing the secret I held, the trap I was setting. There were moments of doubt. Was this too extreme? Was I going too far? Would I regret the fallout, the inevitable confrontation, the shattered pieces of a life, however flawed, that we had built? But then I would think of that credit card statement, of her name next to his, of Paris, and the cold resolve would harden again. He made his choice. Now he would live with the consequences. Consequences delivered not by fate, not by chance, but by the woman he had underestimated. The world outside the window was gray and overcast. Rain streaked the glass, mirroring the somber mood that had become my constant companion. It was the day before. D-Day. Or perhaps, more accurately, P-Day. Paris Day -1. I went through the motions of the morning, making coffee, reading the news online, pretending to be engrossed in my work. He was buzzing around, packing last-minute items, checking his passport, talking about the long flight. He was almost giddy with anticipation. It was sickening to watch. Around 10 o'clock, I picked up the phone. My hand was steady. My heart was beating fast, a frantic drum against my ribs, but my voice was calm, measured. I called the credit card company first. "Hello, I'd like to report some unauthorized charges on my account." The representative was polite, professional. They asked for my account number, my identity verification. All standard. "Can you tell me about the charges?" she asked. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice level, emotionless. "There are charges for airline tickets and a hotel stay in Paris. The dates are for tomorrow." I did not authorize these charges. My husband is an authorized user on the account, but he did not have my permission to use the card for this purpose. There was a brief pause on the other end.
"Okay, Mom.
"I understand. Since you are the primary cardholder and you're stating these specific charges were unauthorized by you, we can dispute them." "I don't just want to dispute them," I said, my voice gaining a fractional edge. "I want to ensure they are canceled. The trip is tomorrow. I need these reservations canceled immediately." "Let me see what I can do," she said. She put me on hold. The hold music was bland, elevator music, a surreal soundtrack to the dismantling of my husband's secret life. I waited and waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. I stared out the window at the rain, my mind a blank. All the fear, the anger, the planning, the tension of the past few weeks had funneled into this single, silent moment. Finally, the representative returned. "Ma'am, I have contacted the merchant services for both the airline and the hotel regarding these specific charges. Based on your statement as the primary cardholder that these were unauthorized, they have agreed to cancel the reservations." A wave of something, relief, vindication, washed over me. It was quickly followed by the cold, hard satisfaction of a trap well sprung. "Both the airline tickets and the hotel reservation have been canceled," she confirmed. "The amounts will be credited back to your account within 5 to 7 business days. We will also flag your account for suspicious activity and can add a note requiring your direct verbal authorization for any travel-related charges moving forward, if you'd like." "Yes," I said. "Please do that." "All right, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "That will be all. Thank you." I hung up the phone. The silence in the house returned, but it was different this time. It wasn't the silence of a lie. It was the silence of a truth, finally set in motion. I sat there for a long moment, the phone still in my hand. My breathing was shallow. My body felt strangely light, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. The tension that had coiled in my gut for weeks began to slowly unravel. He was still packing in the bedroom. I could hear the rustling of clothes, the soft click of hangers. He had no idea. He was completely oblivious, humming a little tune, anticipating his romantic getaway. The thought brought a dry, bitter smile to my lips. I waited. I didn't need to deliver the news myself. The consequences would arrive on their own. Consequences delivered not with tears and accusations, but with the cold efficiency of corporate systems and the power of a name on a plastic card. It was later that afternoon. I was in my office trying to focus on work, but every nerve ending was vibrating. He had left for a late lunch meeting. The house was quiet again. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Not opened, burst. Followed by the sound of his footsteps, heavy, rapid, pounding through the hallway. He wasn't walking, he was stomping. Then his voice. Not his normal tone. Not the calm, measured voice he used even when he was upset. This was something primal. Raw. Filled with disbelief and rage. "What the hell happened?" he roared. I walked out of my office, closing the door quietly behind me. I stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, watching him. He was standing in the middle of the living room, his face red, his hands clenched into fists, holding his phone like a weapon. He looked less like a man going on a trip and more like a cornered animal. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice calm, deliberately mild. "My reservations." They're canceled. Both of them. The flight, the hotel. Paris. He was practically spitting the words, his eyes wide with fury and confusion. They sent me notifications. Reservation canceled due to authorization issues. What does that even mean? He paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair, clearly unable to comprehend what was happening. I called the airline, the hotel. They said the cardholder canceled it, that the charges were disputed as unauthorized. Unauthorized. My trip. My business trip. He stopped pacing and stared at me, his eyes narrowing. He was starting to put it together. The quiet wife. The credit card. The look on my face, carefully blank, but perhaps betraying a hint of something he couldn't quite decipher. You, he whispered, the rage in his voice replaced by a chilling suspicion. Did you? I pushed myself off the wall and walked slowly into the living room. I stopped a few feet away from him. My expression was neutral. There was no triumph on my face, no tears, no shouting. Just a quiet, unwavering certainty. Yes, I said. The single word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. His face crumpled, shifting from suspicion to shock, then back to incandescent rage. You canceled my trip. How could you? My credit card, I said, my voice still low, conversational almost. Remember? The one you used to book your little getaway to Paris? With your mistress? His jaw dropped. He stared at me, utterly blindsided. He hadn't known I knew. He had been so confident in his deception, so sure that I was clueless. The realization hitting him, that I knew everything, that I had known for weeks, that I had deliberately waited, that I had planned this, it was visible on his face like a physical blow. You knew, he stammered, the volume dropping, the bluster draining away, replaced by a dawning horror. I knew, I confirmed. I knew the moment I saw the credit card statement.
Paris. Hôtel Le Petit Louvre.
Her name. Your name.
My card.
It was all there. He stumbled back as if I had struck him. His face was pale now, the redness gone. The arrogance, the confidence completely vanished.
He looked exposed.
Vulnerable. And utterly, completely furious that his carefully constructed world had been demolished not by some outside force, but by the woman he had so carelessly betrayed and underestimated. But why, he sputtered. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you confront me? And let you lie your way out of it? I asked, a hint of the dry humor I'd cultivated over the past few weeks creeping into my voice. Let you make excuses? Let you salvage your little romantic escape? No, thank you. I took a step closer. My voice remained quiet, but it held a steel he had never heard before. You stole from me. You used my money, my resources, the security I had built to fund your fare. You didn't just break my heart. You violated my financial independence, my trust, everything I believed we were building together. That's not just infidelity. That's contempt. He opened his mouth to protest, to lie again, but I cut him off. And because you used my card, I continued, my voice rising slightly, filling the space that had just moments ago been echoing with his rage. As the primary cardholder, I have the authority to dispute any charge I deem unauthorized. Which a trip to Paris for you and your mistress, booked without my knowledge or consent, certainly is. His phone clattered to the floor. He stared at me speechless. The man who had been so confident, so in control, so assured of his clever deception, was utterly undone. He had walked headfirst into the trap he didn't even know was set. They told me, he said, his voice raspy, that the cardholder authorized the cancellation. You called them? I did. I confirmed. I simply stated that the charges were unauthorized. And since they were, by me, the primary cardholder, the airline and hotel were quite cooperative in canceling them. My authorization trumped yours, you see, because it's my card. The full weight of it landed on him. The trip he had planned in secret, the romantic escape he had anticipated, the carefully curated deception, it was all gone.
Poof.
Vaporized by a single phone call, by the simple assertion of my rights over my own finances. And he had unwittingly given me the perfect tool to do it. He screamed then, a wordless roar of pure, frustrated fury and disbelief. It wasn't the scream of a man who had been caught in a lie. It was the scream of a man who had been outsmarted, who had lost something tangible and expensive, who had been blindsided by the person he had dismissed as weak and oblivious. He screamed at the unfairness of it, at the audacity, at the fact that I had done this. He lunged towards me, his face contorted, but I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, watching him, the cold satisfaction, a quiet hum inside me. "Get out," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through his rage like ice. "Get out of my house." The aftermath wasn't a single event, but a slow, deliberate unraveling. His screaming eventually subsided into bitter accusations and impotent threats. He paced, he raged, he called me names. He blamed me for ruining his life, for sabotaging his business trip, for being cold and cruel. The sheer lack of self-awareness was astounding, almost comical in its twisted logic. I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I simply repeated, calmly, that he needed to leave. I had already changed the locks online, activated a security system he didn't know about. I had already contacted the lawyer who was drafting the divorce papers. My plan wasn't just about canceling his trip, it was about ending this. He eventually stormed out, taking a single suitcase, muttering threats about lawyers and getting back at me. I closed the door behind him. The silence that followed was profound. It wasn't empty this time. It was filled with the quiet hum of freedom. The days that followed were a blur of practicalities. Meetings with the lawyer, sorting through finances, packing up his things, boxing them up with a strange detachment. It felt less like packing up a life and more like clearing out clutter. There were moments of sadness, of course. Flickers of memories of the good times, the early days when the love felt real. But they were overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of relief and the quiet satisfaction of having reclaimed my power. He tried to fight it, of course. His lawyer sent angry letters. He threatened to contest the divorce. But he had no ground. The financial evidence of his betrayal, the canceled charges, the dates aligning with his secret plans, it all painted a clear picture. He couldn't explain away using my credit card to take another woman to Paris. He had used my resource, and I had used my authority over that resource. Simple.
Clean.
Brutally effective. The victory wasn't sweet in the way I might have imagined. There was no dancing on his grave, no grand celebration. It was a cold, quiet kind of vindication. A recognition that I had faced a profound betrayal and had responded not with helplessness, but with strategic action. I hadn't just reacted. I had planned. I had used the tools he had unknowingly given me to dismantle the very lie he had built. The house feels different now. Lighter.
Cleaner.
It's mine again, filled with the quiet hum of my own life, my own work, my own plans. There's a sense of possibility that wasn't there before, a wide-open future that no longer includes navigating his lies and deceptions. I learned that betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it can also sharpen the mind. That sometimes the most powerful response to being used is to use the tools of your own exploitation against the perpetrator. That underestimating someone can be the most fatal mistake of all. He wanted Paris. He got a canceled trip, a furious mistress, no doubt, and a divorce. And the chilling realization that the quiet wife he thought he could walk all over was the one who held the power all along. It wasn't about revenge in the end. It was about taking back what was mine. My life, my money, my dignity. And ensuring that his attempt to build his happiness on the ruins of mine ended not with a romantic getaway, but with the cold, hard reality of a cancellation notice. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.